All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar on increasing inclusion through collaboration. As I stated in the chat box, all lines are muted, so if you have a question during this presentation, please put it in the chat box on your screen, and I'll be sure to address it at the end. Just to introduce myself, my name is Carmen DuPoint, and I am a Transition Youth Administrator at Vocational Rehabilitation. And with me is Kirk Hall, Supervisor of the Youth Transition Program here at VR. I also just wanted to start off and thank Kat Keene for the opportunity to speak with all of you today in the hopes of fostering a partnership between our two agencies. So hopefully the information I'm about to share with you will help us move in the right direction.
Carmen, thank you so much. Just to also add, welcome everyone. This is Kat Keene, the Director of National Service Programs at Volunteer Florida and our National Service team. We're really excited to offer you this inclusion through collaboration webinar. Usually something like this would come later in your program year, but we wanted to share with you some new information from the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and we're really excited that Carmen and Kirk can be with us today. And I'll jump in a little bit later, but we just wanted to say welcome on behalf of Volunteer Florida and the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. Thanks, Carmen.
Thank you, Kat. Okay, so today what I'd like to do is tell you a little about VR. Some of you may already be familiar with our services, others may not. So this will be a brief synopsis of what we do in the Youth Transition Program. Although you may not realize it, our agencies share a common goal, and I'm going to talk a little about that and how we can both benefit through collaboration. Then I will talk about how I foresee us working together and the next step. Some of you are probably familiar with the adult services side of VR. In general, we assist persons with disabilities to find, keep, or prepare for employment. But you may be less familiar with our work with youth. And under the Youth Transition Program, VR assists students with disabilities to make that transition from high school to meet their goals after high school, whether that is to go to a career/technical school, college or university, or go directly into employment. Overall, our goal is always to help people with disabilities become employed. So the Youth Transition Program specifically works with youth in high school between the ages of 15 and 21, and they must have a documented disability. As of March 2015, VR was serving approximately 14,902 youth, which turned out to be about 40% of VR's entire caseload. Although these are youth with disabilities, most of these kids, students in high school are in regular classes and even college prep classes. So this is what the proportion of students with disabilities in the school districts look like. The largest part of the population, 38%, had a specific learning disability, so some type of disorder in one or more of the basic psychological processes involved in their understanding or in using language spoken or written that may manifest itself in the imperfect ability to listen or think or speak or read or write or spell. A lot of times people think of things such as dyslexia. That would just be an example. The smallest portion, being 5%, had an emotional/behavioral disability. Now, due to new legislation that was passed last year, VR is required to spend 15% of its federal allocation on youth services. So we expect that the approximately 14,000 students that we served as of March 2015 will increase greatly with this new strengthened emphasis. Our focus for youth really is on getting them the work experiences they need. Some youth know what they want to do, while others may still need help discovering that, which is something else we provide through career assessments and vocational counseling. One thing we know is that research tells us the #1 best indicator of successful employment and independent living after high school is working while in a high school. And we also know that it takes at least 3 work experiences for a person to truly understand the world of work and their interests. So putting youth in on-the-job training opportunities and providing them with work readiness skills, such as how to write a resume or, give that winning interview, that really is our greatest emphasis. And during these work experiences, we get a chance to also identify work accommodations or any types of assistive technology that youth needs to perform successfully on the job. So the additional benefits for youth having these work experiences is that they get a chance to build their resumes with valid knowledge, skills, and abilities, or KSAs. And they also get a chance to develop a list of employer references because, again, research shows that employers prefer references from other employers, not necessarily Johnny's favorite aunt, just, giving a glowing report of his character. So these work experiences also help the students develop a network, which is definitely helpful as many jobs are obtained via word of mouth. And of course, when people around the student at work see with their own eyes the ways people with disabilities can contribute, it promotes a community awareness of disability issues. Lastly, our youth get the chance to develop those soft skills, things such as communication and how to work in teams. Very valuable skills to have no matter where you go, and that will be valuable to them for the rest of their working life. So VR offers various services for youth in addition to the work experiences and job training, all of which are intended to help the student be successful on the job. As I mentioned before, while the student works, we can identify assistive technology that they may need to be successful. That could be the smallest thing, like a smart pen. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a type of recording device that would help the student who may have difficulty with their memory. VR will provide transportation to transition activities. We can provide uniforms if it's something that is required by the employer, or if the student just needs appropriate clothing to go on interviews. Now keep in mind that these first 3 services listed are what we call support services, so they're not standalone. They are available only as a way to support some other primary service, such as the work experience or job placement once the youth into employment after high school. VR can help pay for tuition and supplies for them to go to a career or technical school, college or university, or again, all again to help them prepare for their job goal. There are some students who know exactly what they want to do after high school and just need some help finding the job for them, with them, basically, which is something VR can also help with. The VR counselor can provide guidance and counseling so the student understands benefit packages, how to negotiate salaries, in addition to actually how to conduct an actual job search. Some students may actually require some medical or emotional rehabilitative care, such as prosthetics, which VR would help with if it is considered to be a barrier to the student becoming successfully employed. So you can see how VR is right there every step of the way when a student is placed on a job, always assessing and providing what is needed to support the youth to ensure that they are successful on the job. From this chart, you can see that our youth work in a variety of settings given the opportunity. This data shows during the 2013-14 state fiscal year some of the general areas in which youth gained their work experiences. Keep in mind the lower frequency occupations are not due to the youth's inability per se, but more so due to the lack of opportunities open for us to safely place them according to child labor laws. So from the varied nature of these occupations, you can see our youth are well able to meet the challenges of the work world. So I mentioned earlier that VR and Volunteer Florida have shared goals. So let's take a look at what those are, and Kat is going to step in for a moment to discuss some of these as they are requirements for your Volunteer Florida program. Kat?
Thanks, Carmen. Thanks, Kirk. So I know that many of you that are on the phone that may be new to AmeriCorps are thinking, like, how does this relate to my program? So let me make that connection for you. You've learned all about the outreach and the services that this Division of Vocational Rehabilitation provides youth. You, as AmeriCorps members, are encouraged and required to do recruitment and outreach so that persons with disabilities are involved in your AmeriCorps programs. We know that many of your programs, particularly those of you that serve young people, you are serving persons with disabilities, whether it's a identified element of your program or not. Oftentimes you are. So there's some really important just general disability information we want you to know. But in particular, the requirements are member-related and staff-related for disability inclusion for your AmeriCorps program. In particular, that disability awareness and sensitivity training is our annual requirement that you would provide your members every year as part of those set requirements for training, member training. And then secondly, your members would complete the Members with Disabilities survey. We typically send that at the end of the year and ask that you forward that on to your members. Over the years, about 9 to 11% of AmeriCorps members self-report that they are persons with disabilities. So that's interesting information and helpful information to us to learn, are we engaging more persons with disability or less? And maybe what are the reasons? And then secondly, related to staff, you as AmeriCorps program directors, Volunteer Florida provides at least one annual face-to-face disability sensitivity inclusion training. We'll typically do that in our fall program directors meeting. And we also provide a webinar usually throughout the year, which this would be one of those. And where the rubber hits the road is your Disability Community Development Plan. That document encourages you and actually requires you to identify who your disability organization partners are in your area. So that could be a state agency like VR or the Division of Blind Services or the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. It could be an ESD classroom at a school that's a partner. Or it could be another disability organization in your area like the Centers for Independent Living or Goodwill Industries. So the document requires that you identify 3 partners and that 5 persons with disabilities have a service experience this year. What we've learned at Volunteer Florida is that people with disabilities join AmeriCorps programs when they understand them and are exposed to them. That's probably the single biggest factor, is having people with disabilities be exposed to AmeriCorps, and then often they're more interested in joining and understand the program. And these could be youth, they could be older youth, they could be adults, any age. So that 5 requirement is part of every AmeriCorps program's contract every year, and we ask that you provide a volunteer experience, an internship, or a mentorship for those 5. So one of the goals of this conversation with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation today is to share with you sort of who they are, what their resources are, and how that can happen for you. So for example, if there are young people that are DVS clients that need transportation to come volunteer with you, well, it sounds like Volunteer VR may be able to provide that. And they may be able to provide some other support services too, so that young person with a disability can volunteer, can serve, can mentor with your program. So that's a little bit of the background on that AmeriCorps piece.
Great, thank you for that, Kat. So, just emphasizing too that our greatest shared goal is inclusion. As program directors, you are required to include that in your program activities. And VR, our aim is to place people with disabilities in fully integrated workplace settings, meaning they work alongside people without disabilities. So by partnering with VR, your program automatically meets some of these goals that Kat just described. As VR is one of the primary disability organizations in Florida, by partnering with us, you meet your goal of placing youth in an integrated employment setting. I would imagine at times it may be difficult to find volunteers, particularly when you need to recruit volunteers with disabilities. A lot of times people don't self-report that they have disabilities. So by working with VR, you know that you'll have volunteers that come with a disability because everyone we serve has a disability. So you would have an accurate count of those that you're serving. For our youth, many of them are used to receiving services. So by volunteering, they are simultaneously receiving a service from VR and being of service to their community. And that really helps build their self-esteem. It's not always being the person on the receiving end of help. As I mentioned before, while our youth volunteer with your programs, they will continue to receive the support on the job they need to be successful at work, such as that assistive technology that I mentioned before, or even just learning what those appropriate work behaviors are, as in the work readiness training. Okay, so I browsed through the Volunteer Florida website and read through some of the AmeriCorps programs across the state, and I thought about some of the work our students could volunteer for. I saw the need for child care, and certainly our students could assist child care workers by maybe assembling the kids together, getting their lunches together, maybe reading to the children. I saw a lot of trail improvement projects, and I am not at all going to pretend that I know what that entails, but our kids could, I imagine, hand pull weeds. I have mowing, spraying, and planting in here, but again, that depends on the age of the youth. So, of course, they'd have to be at least 18 years old to participate in certain types of work activities due to the child labor laws. But for the older ones, we can put them to work and make them mow and spray and plant. Those are just a few of the things I thought of, and I'm not aware of all of your programs, but if you think back to the chart I showed you with the top 10 occupations our youth have done, I'm sure you could think of some volunteering opportunities that would suit them well. So what specifically am I asking you to do? In plain terms, VR wants to supply you with volunteers which for our customers would be considered on-the-job training opportunities. They will not be considered AmeriCorps members, only volunteers. Sorry. And all I am asking you to do is have your local programs notify your local VR office about service work opportunities that you have coming up. So VR has offices in every county across the state. Our office directory is found on the link listed here. So what we are looking for are projects that you may have that are not episodic, not one day or a couple of hours, but preferably ones that run 4 to 6 weeks in length. Please make sure you also notify us of the required age that you need for the volunteer. Remember, I just mentioned some activities would not be appropriate for our youth under the age of 18. But we do serve youth ages 15 to 21, so you still have a good range to work with. Our students will have a VR provider that they are currently working with. So our VR counselor would essentially send the student to a VR provider for an on-the-job training opportunity, and the provider is the person that would learn of one of your projects and coordinate with your local project liaison to send you the volunteer. That provider would basically be your support throughout the term of this youth working with you. So it really is that simple. Now, since school has started or will be starting shortly for some, our students can only work anytime outside of school hours. And I guess they usually get out of school around 3 p.m. or so, and on weekends. So I recognize that that may limit some of the opportunities. However, please keep in mind as you're planning for your next summer's projects that you have this availability of VR transition youth as volunteers. So it'd be great if you could be thinking about that to include them in your plan.
Carmen,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to jump in, Carmen, for the folks on the call. So it sounds like for our AmeriCorps programs that might have ongoing projects that are on weekends or after school, like our Florida Parks, for example, or we have some of our programs have weekend service projects every weekend. That sounds like that might be a fit. Would that be correct?
That would be absolutely perfect.
Great. Okay. And many of our programs do engage in some of those activities related to mentoring kids and doing physical service projects. A lot of our programs on the weekends would be doing those physical service projects like painting, beautification, and in particular for you AmeriCorps program directors on the phone, you may want to think about days of national service like 9/11, MLK Day, or others that your community recognizes as a good place to also engage volunteers with disabilities.
That is perfect. Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. Those would be perfect opportunities for our youth. Okay. All right. So at this point, the next step really would be just for you to go back and inform your local project coordinators of where to find the local VR office. Using that link, again, you can find any office across the state. Please review your projects and notify the VR office of any upcoming events that you think would be a good. Also, I'm sorry, I don't know what that was, but also please know that Kirk and I are always available to facilitate those conversations with your staff and our staff. If you need some help getting started there, please just let us know. You can give us a call. And here is my information along with Kirk. What I would like to do now is open for any questions that you may have. All lines are muted, so please use the chat box located on your screen to submit questions, and we'll answer them in the order that they come. And I'm not sure, Kat, if you can see the questions. If not, then I can also read it to you if it's a question specifically for you. And I also want to thank you for giving me the time to pose this idea of our agencies collaborating together, because I think it would be really beneficial for all of us, including our youth.
Absolutely. Well, as folks may be typing in their questions, thank you so much, Carmen and Kirk, for offering this to our AmeriCorps programs. For those of you on the call, as you reach out to your local VR person, we have found over the years that what it's all about is that relationship that you have with that local VR counselor. If you want to copy your program manager or VR staff on those communications, you're welcome to do so. We're happy to make inroads if needed. I do have one question for your team, Carmen. When they reach out to the VR counselors, is that a school-based personnel? For example, a VR counselor working in the schools, or is that a different position?
School-based personnel.
It is a school-based personnel.
Okay, so great.
There are counselors who work with every public school.
We have all of our counselors across the state work with every public school.
Great.
So
great.
we have one counselor assigned to every public school.
Yeah, we just thought that that might be the ideal point of contact, as many of our AmeriCorps programs are in the schools as well. Great.
Certainly.
Well, AmeriCorps folks, if we can help in any way with you developing these relationships, I think you'll find that VR is such a robust organization. There's probably other ways that your organizations could work with VR outside of AmeriCorps. There's all kinds of partnership opportunities. So we want to support you in that, whatever that looks like this year.
Great. All right. We're still open for questions if anyone would like to ask something. Okay, and if you're like me, you'll think of something later on after you've thought about some of the information that you've heard. So please feel free to contact me by phone or email. And my information is listed there for you to reference.
And thank you, VR, for recording. This will be posted on our National Service Director's website, the site of our website for you in the near future. Thank you, Kirk. Thank you, Carmen. We look forward to working with you this year.
Thank you, everyone.